The night it happened began with a moment so raw and unexpected that it felt like the air itself had cracked open. A single father stood in the dim light of his small living room, exhaustion etched into his face, when a woman he barely knew broke down in front of him and asked if she could sleep beside him, not out of desire but out of fear, grief, and a loneliness that had finally become too heavy to carry. In that instant, his heart froze, not because of temptation, but because he recognized the sound of a soul unraveling, a sound he knew all too well from the nights he himself had stared at the ceiling after his wife died. This was not a moment about romance, it was about trust, boundaries, and the quiet power of compassion when it matters most. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that one good choice can change a life, take a moment right now to like this video, comment, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps stories like this alive. His name was Matthew Caldwell, a single dad in his late 30s living in a modest neighborhood outside Columbus, Ohio, where the streets were lined with old maple trees and houses that held more memories than fresh paint. Matthew's life revolved around routines built to survive loss. Mornings were about packing lunches and tying shoelaces, evenings about homework, frozen dinners, and reading bedtime stories to his 7-year-old son, Noah. Since losing his wife to a sudden illness 3 years earlier, Matthew had learned how to keep moving without truly feeling. He functioned, but he did not live. The house was quiet in a way that felt permanent, and every decision he made was measured against one question: would this protect his child? The woman standing in his living room that night was named Rachel Morrison, a Christian name as ordinary as her story was complicated. She had recently moved into the neighborhood after a painful divorce that left her financially strained and emotionally hollow. They had met only a few times, brief hellos during school pickups, polite smiles at the mailbox. But over weeks, casual conversations had grown into shared coffees and careful laughter. Matthew had sensed sadness in her eyes, the kind that doesn't ask for attention but silently hopes someone notices. That evening she had come over under the excuse of returning a borrowed book, but the moment she stepped inside, her strength collapsed. Tears came fast, unfiltered, and the words spilled out between sobs about panic attacks, sleepless nights, and a fear of being alone in the dark. Matthew listened, his chest tightening as memories flooded back. He remembered nights after his wife's funeral when the silence felt dangerous, when sleep became something to fear because it left him alone with his thoughts. Rachel's request to sleep near him was not about crossing a line, it was about feeling safe enough to rest. Still, Matthew felt the weight of responsibility press down on him. He was a father first, always. He understood how fragile moments like this could become if mishandled, how easily comfort could turn into confusion or regret. He needed to choose carefully, not just for himself, but for the example he set for his son. He offered her a place on the couch, extra blankets, and the quiet reassurance of presence without intimacy. He stayed awake longer than usual that night, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of cold coffee, listening to the rhythm of another human breathing in his home. It was strange and grounding at the same time. For the first time in years, the house did not feel empty, yet his boundaries remained intact. He checked on Noah, tucked safely in his room, and whispered a promise to himself that he would never let loneliness make decisions for him again. Morning came softly, sunlight spilling through the curtains as the smell of toast filled the air. Rachel looked embarrassed but calmer, her eyes clearer than the night before. Matthew didn't need words to understand what had changed. Sometimes the greatest kindness is simply offering safety without expectation. Over the following days, something subtle shifted. Rachel began to heal, slowly finding her footing, while Matthew noticed his own heart thawing in ways he hadn't allowed since his loss. Their connection deepened, not through grand gestures but through respect, patience, and shared understanding. Life did not suddenly become easy. Matthew still struggled with guilt whenever he felt happiness creeping back into his life, as though moving forward meant leaving his late wife behind. Rachel wrestled with shame from her past, questioning whether she deserved stability after everything she had endured. Yet together, they learned that healing does not require perfection, only honesty. They spent afternoons at the park with Noah, evenings talking about books and faith, and Sundays attending a small local church where hope was preached in quiet, steady tones. One night months later, Matthew realized how much had changed when he caught himself laughing freely, the sound unfamiliar but welcome. The house felt warmer, fuller, not because someone had filled the space his wife left, but because he had allowed himself to grow around the pain instead of living inside it. Rachel, too, found strength in knowing she could be vulnerable without being taken advantage of, that trust could exist without strings attached. Just before the ending of this story, I want to ask you something special. Please comment below and share what kindness or second chance means to you. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. In the end, what changed everything was not a dramatic romance or a single night of comfort, but a choice rooted in integrity. Matthew showed his son, without ever saying a word, that real strength lies in doing what is right when no one is watching. Rachel learned that safety and love can begin with respect. And together, they proved that even in a world full of brokenness, there are still people willing to hold the line between compassion and temptation. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that goodness still exists in quiet decisions and unseen moments, please take a second to like, comment, and share this video. Your engagement helps spread stories that heal, inspire, and remind us all that sometimes the most powerful thing you can offer another person is simply a safe place to rest.